Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So welcome back to the afternoon session. It's going to be on sustainable healthcare solution. So if you think about healthcare, what comes to your mind? Hospitals, doctors, what else? Pharmaceuticals, diagnostics, therapeutics, surgicals, right? So all these things is what we are going to discuss. Whatever you said is right. And what is this sustainability? Do you have any idea what sustainability is? You heard about the United Nations framework, SDG. What is that? So what is the purpose of that? Yes. So we have been using lots of resources, natural resources, and we have come to a point that it is being exhausted on one side. On another side, we have been polluting the earth that it is going to boil, right? 2030 is the deadline. We are 1.5 degrees Celsius with the amount of carbon dioxide emission. If you're going to continue to emit lot of carbon dioxide, that will lead to 2 degrees Celsius, which will cause a havoc on the earth. So that's why we have come up with this. That's one of the reasons, but there are also other reasons to have a safe, to make the earth as a safe haven for future generation. So for that, in 2015, the United Nations, they constituted these 17 goals. And one of the goals is to have a sustainability healthcare. Now, what way we can make the healthcare sustainable? So that's what we are going to look into it. So, why you have to bother about climate change on the health? The climate change is just going to increase the temperature. What are the other things it can have? So these are the things you can have. The climate change is not just going to increase the temperature, it is going to have severe weather changes. Air pollution is one of the things we do. There is going to be increase in allergens. The water quality is going to get impacted. Environmental degradation, so from soil to all other resources are going to get degraded. Extreme heat. Now this extreme heat, you cannot mitigate with just the air conditioners. Anyway, we have to go out. So once you start to use a lot of this, you're going to use a lot of energy. Now once we get into the sun's energy with increased temperature, that's going to have a lot of changes in your physiology. It's going to cause what did we discuss in the morning? The proteins. The proteins are going to fold in a different way in that temperature, causing, now itself you can see, you take the surveys, there is an increase in dementia and Alzheimer's. It's not a disease of old age. It also happens for young individuals. Why? Because of these impacts. So there is going to be misfoldings of lot of biomolecules, and that will cause a problem in healthcare. Okay, let us move to the next one. So you should, I don't know, anybody knows about this carbon footprint? Heard about it? Yes, what is it?
The amount of carbon dioxide emitted.
So for any activity, you can calculate carbon footprint. So how much of carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases which are going to be emitted for that activity, that is the carbon footprint for that activity. Likewise, you can calculate for an individual, for an institute, for an industry. So you can go on based on how much of greenhouse gases are going to be produced. What are the greenhouse gases? carbon dioxide, methane, what else? Water vapor is minor, that's not going to cause, it's just going to cause the humidity. Yes, sulfur dioxide, that's, so majorly it is methane, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide and minorly sulfur dioxide. So this, you can see the units, usually it is measured in kilograms or metric tons, and it has got an impact on the environment. So significant environmental impact. Now the intensity, if you see, each and every company, I don't know, now IITs are encouraging students to start startups. Maybe most of you may be an entrepreneur tomorrow, having startups. If you're going to start a company, you should think about having a lower carbon footprint with sustainable certifications. So that's an important aspect. And if you go to any corporate company also, this, there will be a separate department which will be looking about the sustainability certification. So where they will try to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide or the greenhouse gas emissions. So there is a different way by which this emissions are calculated. They call it a scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, that is a measure in environmental sciences. So scope 1 is about 17% in healthcare and transport. So scope 1 is a direct emission. Okay. Scope 2 and scope 3 are indirectly you emit due to all the processes. So directly the healthcare sector is going to give 17% of carbon dioxide emission, and indirectly because they are going to get some products from agriculture, other manufacturing, transport, treatments, right? They also use in the hospital, laundry services. These are all indirect, right? So from that you get 71% of emission, and scope 2, which is from the public sources, distribution of electricity, heat, again you get 12%. So these are the different sources of greenhouse gas emission or the carbon footprint in case of healthcare areas. Now overall, if we see the GHG emission country-wise, so which is the major country contributing to the greenhouse gas? It is the United States, then comes China. So whichever is the developed nation, they are the one who are producing lot of these greenhouse gases. You may not see much, India is only, but still it's 2%. Okay, so what you may say, we are not producing, we are not emitting lot of greenhouse gases, but you are on the same earth. It's not that they are emitting, nothing is going to happen to you. It's going to affect the whole of the earth, and the impact we also have to face it. And unfortunately, they are not participating in the greenhouse gas reduction at all. That's the major problem we are facing. So this is about the thing which you need to know. So wherever there is development, so most of the developing countries and the business people will not support the sustainability goals at all, because they will say if you need economic development, you cannot, you cannot go with this. But by doing research, you can also get economic development as well as reduce the amount of greenhouse gases. Now this is the amount of carbon footprint from the buildings, electricity and clinic care, 80% are coming out, and from the clinic care you get 80%, and from the building and other sources you get 20%. To give you a broad overview, I have given that. Now this is the contribution of different sectors of greenhouse gas emission in healthcare. Now if you see delivery of care and supply chain is the pharmaceuticals and chemicals. They have to be transported and they have to be given medical equipment. They have to be transported for their functioning. You're going to use electricity, and electricity, this we have to discuss. Electric vehicles, are they clean source of vehicle? Because people, they don't emit gases. They don't pollute the air. But where do you get the electricity from? From the coal. So they are not clean energy vehicles. If you're going to operate on some other source, say solar, okay, then you can say it is a clean energy. As of now, it is not a clean source of, or it's not sustainable way of getting transportation. So medical equipment, the business services, other procurements, food and catering, that also contributes substantial amount. Non-medical equipments like generators also have. So these are the delivery care where anesthetic gases, we think that that is going to be minor, but they are a major source of greenhouse gas. So that has to be again looked into. Personal travel, that's the patient, they travel from their home every visit, right? After one surgery, they have to go for reviews or for screening, you have to go. So that also staff commute, visitor travel and commission service. All these things are contributing to the carbon dioxide emissions in the healthcare sector. So,
talk about electric vehicles. Obviously, they're getting their electricity from the carbons, but in the electricity power plant, isn't there a proper implementation of reducing CO2? That is, obviously CO2 will be produced, but
no.
any method?
Wait. Let me. In India, the source of electricity is majorly from coal, lignite. We have lot of coal resources by which the production of electricity is cheaper. So our government has told until 35 we won't shift to other things because it should be economically feasible also. So we are contributing to it. So there is another set of research going on, as you say. The carbon dioxide which is being produced will be mitigated, will be captured through some catalyst, or it will be converted to another fuel. So that is also being done. One of my colleagues, she's working on that, carbon dioxide capture. So that work is also being done. But as of now, we don't have the solution. The research is going on.
What's more harmful for the environment, electric vehicles or petroleum fuels?
Petroleum, directly it emits the exhaust gases, right? And your electric vehicle, they do not emit directly, but the electricity which you use, that is produced from certain amount of burning coal. It is not emitting here, it is being emitted at the site of, maybe the Ennore or in the Neyveli or somewhere, wherever.
So,
Wherever.
which carbon footprint is greater?
They say it is the electric vehicle. I don't know the calculation behind that. I should ask some environmental engineer. So again, you can see the impact of all these things. I'm not again explaining this. It's almost similar. So this is from a research article where they did a research on how much a hospital is contributing. It's from a German study. So they have stated that there is approximately 500 liter consumption per bed per day. And anesthetic gas, it contributes to 1/3 of this hospital emission. 13 million, of emission is due to the MRI, CT scans, and approximately 18% is due to the canteens, catering services. So this is a real research study. So this is where my forte comes. Anesthetic chemicals. So you do any of the surgery, major surgeries, we either use local anesthetic or a full anesthetic, systemic anesthesia, right? So for that, what do we use? Some chemicals, anesthetic chemicals. So commonly, there are so many anesthetic chemicals that are available. You can search xylene, azepam, nitrous oxide is a common one, and desflurane is a common anesthesia. Now, depending on the choice of your anesthetic chemical, the carbon dioxide emission will be different. Now, if you use nitrous oxide, it is equivalent to driving a car for 106 kilometers, whereas if you use desflurane. Okay, that is equivalent to 200 to 400 kilograms. So which is a better one? It is sevoflurane. Sevoflurane is an anesthetic chemical which will help in reduced CO2 emission. So when we do some choice, when you plan for something, you should not just think about how the process is going to happen. Hereafter, you should think about the sustainability as well. But when you ask as a doctor which one is important, the life is important, and there what you should see, the risk to benefit for the patient. And if you see, if the sevoflurane is not compatible for the patient and nitrous oxide is only compatible, you should definitely go for it out of this. This is emitted on the environment. In the environment, it will not just say, it will be converted into, react with the components of the atmosphere, and it will be converted to either methane or carbon dioxide. Not immediately. Okay? So people are working to develop anesthetic chemicals which has less CO2 emission or nil CO2 emission, or it doesn't contribute to GHG at all. Now this, how many of you know this is, what is this? Inhaler, mostly used by asthma patients. Now just with the difference in the shape, if you're going to use this linear or tube-like inhaler, it almost causes carbon dioxide emission equivalent to 175 miles of driving. Okay. Now, when they designed it in different way, it reduced. You may ask how. Okay. When you use this, there was lot of dissipation. It also led to lot of wastage of the chemical and mixing with the environment. But when this model was used, it reduced and it effectively went into the system. So that's the difference. So if you have an acumen for designing, I think 4 or 5 years people were all behind BS designing. So here comes the use of design mindset. Yes.
This 175 miles is by releasing all the container into the atmosphere or after desiccation?
No, all the content, not just, yeah, whole. Yeah, this is an interesting data. Carbon footprint based on diet. So which is the best diet for sustainable development? It is vegetarian diet. Why so? So you can see the carbon footprint. So the beef, lamb, chicken, fish, pork, and even dairy, it leads to 18 in metric tons. Okay. So 58.99 unit is kg carbon dioxide per 100 kilocalories. Okay. Now if you take this way, the shrimp, lamb, just the non-vegetarian food, you can see which is, all of them are going to produce lot of carbon dioxide. When you come to the seafood, it is reduced, and apples you can see it is almost negligible. Why do you think there is a difference? Why this difference is observed when you have a non-vegetarian food and vegetarian food? And based on this, the European Union, they have made policies, okay? Whenever they conduct a seminar, workshop or conference, the government only funds for vegetarian food based on the sustainability goal and based on these data. So why do you think the non-vegetarian food is having so much of carbon dioxide emission? Why so? Yes, one is animal breeds, mostly dairy animals, they are going to release methane, okay? But that is also negligible. So, yeah, but for their growth, the amount of water, the amount of, the grass and all other things which you feed, that has to be calculated. To get 1 kg of meat, how much of these? Yeah. So that comes the difference. So which is a sustainable one? the vegetarian food.
The processed foods seem to have lesser carbs.
Which one?
The more processed snacks, sugar, oil spills.
Yes, yes, that has less CO2 emission.
Yeah, compared to fruits and vegetables.
That's true.
So, like, are we really supposed to prioritize what's health or
No, see, I'm not recommending you to take junk foods. Snacks and sugars means what do we, how do we produce them? Mostly from carbohydrates. So easy source, cheap source. So that is why the emission of carbon dioxide is less. But when it goes into your system, again it does not immediately cause problems. Only when it goes beyond a level. Always in medicine, we have this, right? Dosage matters. There is nothing which is poisonous. Even a poisonous medicine, if you use it in a lower concentration. So that's right. தமிழ்ல ஒன்று சொல்வாங்கல்ல, அளவுக்கு மிஞ்சினா அதே தான் ஸ்நாக்குக்கும், அளவுக்கு மிஞ்சினா அமிர்தமும் விஷம். That's the thing. It is not recommending you to take what? Snacks and fruits. They're actually not so good for your health. For your information, fruits, if you take too much, it is going to cause high sugar. Continuously, if you're going to take fruits alone, it's going to cause high sugar, bloating. You should have a balanced diet with vegetables. And you may ask, so if you tell us to stop taking meat, then where do we get the source of proteins? You have all the proteins in the vegetables and grains. The thing is, you should not go for a mono diet, you should go for a mixed diet. So we were speaking about we were discussing about the amino acids, right? What are the essential amino acids which is required? Oh, it's time. There are only 9 essential amino acids which is required for your body. All other amino acids are going to be synthesized by your own body from the sugar which you eat. Okay? If you can find out the sources which has all the 9, mix it and eat, definitely you can supplement it. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. So that is again, that's a good point which ma'am told. So the carbon footprint which we are discussing, the transportation of food from different places or different countries is going to contribute to a lot of emissions rather than taking it from local sources. So footprint of your vegetable or your food matters. Footprint matters. So that's why they recommend taking locally. Yeah.
we look at it that snacks and sugar are processed and packaged. So that also affects
Which way?
snacks and sugar.
Yes.
They're processed and packaged.
Everything is packaged. In today's world, everything is packaged. Here, packaging is not taken into consideration. This research study didn't take that into consideration. It just took into consideration how much of carbon dioxide is going to be emitted during its, production. Okay, that's it.
That way also snacks and sugars are processed in factories.
Yes.
Vegetables are grown in gardens.
See, where do you get your snacks and what do you call sugar? Where do you get your sugar from? It's from sugarcane, beetroot, right? See, you have to think in bulk quantities. Sugarcane, beetroots are not just grown in 1 or 2; they are grown in acres, and the amount of water which is consumed compared to your chicken or beef is lesser. So that is the thing. It is not that they don't release. They release, but it is comparatively lesser, 2.51 kg per 100 kilocalories. Okay, this is again the carbon footprint which is released during the process of waste disposal in the hospital. Am I having your attention? Yeah, please. So for the recycling of some of the the glassware, we do the autoclaving. and for the incineration of waste, clinical waste, and high temperature incineration. All these are going to again release carbon or the GHGs. So this is a minor contribution, but still it has been taken into account. A lot of doctors, clinicians, researchers, we attend conferences, and due to that again, you have these amount of carbon dioxide release in person and virtual congress. This is not from our country, but this is from UK. So you can see the amount of carbon dioxide emitted if you take a air travel, and the amount of carbon dioxide comparison in person congress, that is the conference which you attend in person, and the virtual conferences. You may say that means online is better. You may ask whether it is better. In a way, it is better for the environment, but I don't know how far it is impactful to the attendees. So in that way, there is a that you need to think about. But for this carbon footprint, they were all these factors were taken into consideration. So what are the ways by which you can have a sustainable healthcare? What things you can do? So one is, we all know, but difficult to follow, right? Prevention. So prevention of diseases, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, taking a nutritious diet, right? Sleeping on time, having less stress. So that is the first thing. The second thing is patient self-care. Okay, once the person gets a disease, again, if he can take care of himself and take the medications properly, they can avoid hospitalization. Then lean service delivery. What is this? Some of the services can be given to the patient at home, and we have to go for low carbon alternatives. As I told you, for the anesthetic chemicals, whichever is going to give a low carbon footprint, we have to choose that. Then operational resources use. So we need to have a better management, administration of all the resources. That if you take the equipment or the energy, water or the waste, all these things should have a better way of tackling it. So these things have to be accessible, affordable, economically friendly and environmentally friendly. So these are the role of innovation in sustainable practices. So this has considerably reduced, what is that? Digital health records. They have considerably reduced the usage of papers. So for the papers, what we do? We cut trees. So from that, we can reduce the footprint. Telemedicine, yes, this is practiced today even in some of the villages. So instead of commuting the patients to the city or any other place, this has reduced the carbon emission which happens due to the transportation, and it is also making the facilities available to patients. There is efficiency that has been carried out in waste management and green pharmaceuticals. So in pharmaceuticals, how do we produce the drugs? So most of the chemicals I told you in the morning is being identified or discovered from plants, 70% of the drug which you use. But for bulk production, we cannot be going and isolating it from the plants. We need organic chemists who will synthesize that in the chemical labs and then in the industries. It will be moved to industry. Now, this process of production, if it is going to be, if the waste or the solvents that are used is going to affect the environment, that is a problem. So they will be going for a green chemistry process so that the solvents used or the chemicals released into the environment after the production is environment friendly. So these are the ways by which you can reduce the carbon or GHG emissions. So we have Green Hospital Initiative, but in our country we are yet to start this. Telemedicine expansion has happened, and in pharmaceutical industry some of them have moved to green chemistry. So this is about the monitoring of greenhouse gases, how it has impacted in various ways. So you can see that the remote monitoring program has considerably reduced your, the money which is going to be used in patient commuting, as well as the carbon dioxide emission. 31.7 million travel miles has been reduced because of that, and that has reduced the metric tons of carbon footprint and saved a lot on the healthcare expenditure as well as the preservation of trees. So this we have to give some importance, our traditional knowledge, Indian medical knowledge or Indian system of medicine. That is the Ayurveda. What are the other system of medicine we have? Siddha, homeopathy. Homeopathy is not from India, it is from Germany, but still it is a alternative medicine. It's not based, we don't have a solid science backup for that, and some of the people are working on it, but all the processes and the drugs used are sustainable. So, and there are research going on to prove what is the process and mechanism behind it. People can work on that. So this is a way by which again we can move towards sustainable healthcare. So green principles, how the green principles can be used. So we have already discussed about the prevention, less hazard chemical synthesis. Yes, catalysis is a major principle where which is used in the production of your green chemistry. So this will reduce the amount of energy used in the synthesis as well as the side product, the products. Product is going to, the drug will be the main product, but still you will have other chemicals which will be produced that will also be converted to a less harmful product, then it will be released into the environment. See, all the drugs you cannot synthesize in a clean green chemistry way. That's somewhat difficult. But at least you can make the harmful byproducts into a less harmful product and then release it into the environment. So that is being mostly mediated by the catalysis or use of catalysts. Okay, so let's move to the next. So these are the pharma drugs where they have used green chemistry, which is sertraline hydrochloride. Usually it causes a lot of what we call endocrine disrupting chemicals which will be released into the environment. But when the process was converted into a green chemistry using a commercial process, which is using a catalyst also, it prevented pollution, it reduced the energy and water use, and it doubled the yield also. Pregabalin, it is an immunosuppressive drug, okay? So it replaced all the chemical solvents. Usually we use a lot of solvents during the synthesis process with water. So again, that reduced a lot of harmful chemicals and usage of mandelic acid, which cannot be degraded at all. So sitagliptin, it's again produced by enzymatic process. Doramestin, which is replaced by biocatalyst. What's the biocatalyst? Enzymes are being used. So 40% increase in efficiency, and there is a reduced production of byproducts. Ibuprofen, which is a painkiller, commonly used by most of the people in the population. So this process of producing this has been reduced from 6 steps to 3 steps. So that itself has reduced the amount of energy utilized. Gemifloxacin. What is this? It's an antibiotic. So the biocatalyst is being used in that manufacturing process. Atorvastatin, which is again a steroid chemical drug. Enzyme catalysis is being used. And similarly, simvastatin, enzymatic process is used. So when you use the enzymatic process, which means you use a catalyst basically, So that reduces the amount of energy used. Also, it efficiently converts most of the reactants into products, reducing the byproduct. So this is the way by which you can go for reducing the carbon footprint in the synthesis or manufacturing of drugs. So this is one example of showing how the convention method is being done, how the green method is replacing it. So ABT 546 is a pregabalin type of drug. So usually they take the tartaric acid, crystallize it, and the percentage of yield is very less during that process. And solvent removal and extraction takes lots of energy, lots of optimizations. But when you go for prochiral as a starting material, chiral, you know the stereochemistry, right? So when you take a chiral material of this tartaric acid with 88% selectivity and use of catalyst in water, it gives a 96% yield. So that was about drugs. So we saw that during the diagnostic process also, we do lot of tests, blood work is being carried out. So we use chemicals during that process, and we also dispose lot of clinical waste. How do we dispose it? You incinerate it, right? So this is the two way. So how can we reduce this? One thing is, you can, and also where we have this scans, CT scans, MRI scans, which requires a high footprint itself. Footprint means space itself, as well as the energy required for that MRI or CT scan is, as of now, it is very high. The amount of, when we use electricity itself, it means we are going to emit a lot of CO2, right? So, how come this nanotechnology is going to help in reducing that? Now, if I have to go into that, it's a different story. So, how many of you are aware about nanomaterials or nanoparticles? You know what is nanoparticle? Yeah? What is it? So, any material of the size to the 10 to the power of 9, minus 9. Okay? Very, very small. You know micro. All your microorganism, bacteria is at the size of micro. But when you reduce the size to the nano level, the property itself changes. So, for example, you take gold. Bulk gold, which we have, its optical property is different. How it appears? It appears in yellow metal, gold color. But when you reduce it to the 10 to the power minus 9, the size of the particle or the molecule, the atomic construction, the crystal size, if you're going to reduce it, now you can get different colors of gold particles. It will be yellow in color, it will be orange in color, red, green, based on the size. If it is 50 nanometer, it will be in one color. 20 nanometer, it will be different color. So this is one example where you can see that there is change in the property, right? Similarly, there will be change in the reactivity. So bulk material, if it is going to be reactive, for example, gold, is it reactive or non-reactive? Non-reactive. But nano gold will become reactive. And there are some substances which will be reactive in your bulk, but when you reduce it to nano particles, it will become non-reactive. Likewise, electrical property, all mechanical property is going to be, totally opposite when you compare with the bulk and the nano. So, when we use such technology, one thing is you can reduce the footprint and they become so sensitive. You can select the material which are so sensitive so that you need to use only micro liters. For example, when I have to measure a lipid profile of a person, how do? I take the blood, I am going to subject it to an auto analyzer, at least 2 ml of blood has to be given as of now. Now, even that you can reduce, that itself is better, I'll say. You can reduce to 50 microliter and everything can be enumerated, not only lipid. So that kind of the machine miniaturization, the sensitivity can all be improvised by nanotechnology. So now I was talking to you about nanoparticle, using those material for developing any technology is nanotechnology. You can apply it in healthcare, your energy sector, environmental sector, lot of applications are there. In case of medicine, they have tried it for drug delivery. Okay. Another way by which we can improvise it, say for example, we take paracetamol, right? What is the dosage you take? 500 or 650. Now, if you take that much, why do we take? For what we take? We take it for either fever or sometimes if you have headache also people take. But actually it is an antipyretic, which means it reduces your temperature. I told you in the morning, it acts against the inflammatory enzyme, which is going to cause inflammation, the COX enzyme. So, the enzyme requires only micromolar quantity for its inhibition, but we take in milligrams. Why? You are taking it through oral route, it goes to your intestine, in the stomach and then to the intestine. You have considerable loss there. Your stomach is not going to absorb everything. Okay? Half of it only will be absorbed. Then it does not go into the circulation. It goes to the liver. In the liver, what happens? You have many detoxifying enzymes. There some degradation happens. From that, only half goes into the circulation. So, which means what? Out of 500, only 125 is released, and this COX enzyme can be anywhere reaching that place through the circulation. It requires that much amount of concentration. So all this whole process is called as first pass metabolism. So we lose a lot of drugs in this. It's not effective. And this drug is going to circulate throughout the body, causing systemic side effects, adverse effects. It affects your intestine, causing bloating and other thing. And if you consistently take, it also affects your liver. Liver toxicity happens. So if I have to deliver exactly to where I need to, then you have to go for having a delivery system, which is a nano delivery system. Now these days, liposomes, which is like a lipid particle, that is the only FDA approved nano delivery system. All others are there. Metals are being researched, all other materials are used, but none of it is being approved. So in that they load the substance, they inject it into the body and it releases where it has to be released. You may ask how. For example, a cancer drug has to be given. Now cancer tissue has this property, it has a low pH. What's your physiological pH? 7.4. In the stomach it is less, 3. In the small intestine it is high, 8 as basic. But all other places it is 7.4. But when there is a cancer tissue, the pH drops. It becomes acidic. So they design it in such a way that the liposome breaks once it goes to the acidic environment. It senses that acidic pH and releases. So it will not release in any other place. You may ask, can't we take it through oral? No, you cannot take through oral. They inject it. So in this way, again, you can reduce the dosage, you can avoid unnecessary side effects, you can reduce the energy used. So all these things are possible with nanotechnology. That's a different topic of discussion for a lecture. So I'm not going much into the details. This is, yeah. So now already a lot of vaccines are being given, but those vaccines, basic vaccine strategies have to be given. Otherwise, unnecessarily individual might develop diseases, infectious diseases, which will lead to hospitalizations. Yeah. So in that, I was telling in the morning about the adjuvants which I use or which we develop. So sustainable vaccines can be produced using adjuvants. So we cannot produce all the, antigens. So I don't know how many of you know about the principle behind vaccine. So if you want to get an immunity against a bacteria, what do? We inject the bacteria itself. As such, if you inject, it may cause disease. So we kill the bacteria and inject it. But it may not be efficient because you are denaturing the proteins. So there is another technology where we attenuate. The bacteria is there, but it will lose its capacity to produce the disease. So the harmful proteins which causes the disease will be removed. So that will be injected and then you get the vaccine. Or you take one particular protein which causes the disease or which can be identified as a marker of that bacteria or virus, that you add along with the adjuvant and you inject it. So this is called subunit vaccine. You have heat-killed whole vaccine, whole bacteria or the pathogen, or attenuated pathogen or the subunit vaccine. And during the COVID period, you got another version which is the mRNA vaccine, which will integrate with your cell and will produce the protein of the pathogen. Then your cells will identify and produce the antibodies. So this is how vaccines work. Now these vaccines, it's difficult, right? If I miss a quality check and if there is going to be a live bacteria or a less attenuated, the person might get the disease. So instead of that, you reduce the amount of whatever you are going to give as a vaccine and add the adjuvant. So adjuvant will help in avoiding reduce the number of immunizations, and it can also be developed for other diseases for which presently we don't have vaccines, like HIV, cancer. Some of the cancer we do have, like HPV vaccine, cervical cancer, but for other cancers we don't have. But I'll not recommend cancer vaccine as a preventive strategy. So for all the cancers, if you're going to get vaccines, then you have to be injecting the vaccines daily. So instead, we have to develop therapeutic vaccines, which means you give, once the person is diagnosed with cancer, you can give a vaccine which will fight or equip the body to fight against that cancer. That's called as therapeutic vaccine. So this is about using biodegradable material and use of additive manufacturing. What is additive manufacturing? Is 3D printing, especially when it comes to use of implants. When a person meets with an accident, what happens? They break the bones. So what are the material which we use? Yeah, steel, metal implants or ceramic implants. Metal implants are going to cause a lot of footprints. So we can go for additive manufacturing with sustainable materials, which is from the nature. So these are the already available sustainable biomaterial, which is chitosan. Cellulose is from the trees and the plants. Chitosan is from the seashells. Okay, the outer shell has this. These are carbohydrate based. Silk fibroid from silk, and these are green chemicals which are used as the material for wound dressing or for treating bone related disorders or for surgeries. So this is about this again. Now this is the latest advancement use of AI to improvise your sustainability in healthcare. So this, you have to connect everything, all your data has to be given. How you think, what you search for is already known to the algorithm in your phone. Now you should also feed in what is there inside your body, then that will take care. So it will, a lot of research is going on again in this. So I'm not dwelling into that. So finally, all these will have to help us to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide which is being used in healthcare. So not much of research is being addressed in this area. So that's why I wanted to focus on that. My area of research is not in this, but I wanted you to get exposed to this so that if any one of you gets interested, it will be, that will be the impact which I have created. I don't know how much of you would be interested to go in this line, but there is a separate field called as sustainability engineer and carbon, climate change and carbon reduction engineers. So I know some of my relatives who are working in that line, but as of now, it is very difficult. In papers, they are able to do. In reality, they are not able to reduce the carbon dioxide emission. So we have to work really hard on this. And there is discrepancy of data as you ask for the snacks and the other thing. That has to be addressed as well. Okay. So with this, I conclude my talk. So any questions? I'm also learning in this. I don't know much about it. So if I know, I will. Otherwise, we will have a discussion. I think the next speaker is already there.
We extend our sincere thanks to Dr. Rajashri for her fascinating lecture on immunology and nanomedicine, something that is very new to us. And the legacy of Dr. G.N. Ramachandran, whose discoveries remain a cornerstone of biophysics, and the eye-opening discussion on sustainability in healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you.